They say you never really know your own children until trouble comes storming through your front door. Let me tell you, I found that out the hard way. It all started on an icy Thursday evening in Minneapolis. I was settling in for the night, my usual cup of chamomile cooling on the side table, the local newspaper spread across my lap. My old house creaked and groaned with every gust of wind, but to me, those were the sounds of home. I'd lived here more than 40 years. Built the place with my own 2 hands. Every crack in the floorboards had a story. My son, Tyler, had always been ambitious. Too ambitious, maybe? He'd moved to Denver years ago to chase bigger dreams, started a tech firm with a handful of college friends. I didn't see him much after that. But that night, as sleet tapped against the windows, the past came barreling into my living room. The front door flew open so hard the old hinges screamed. Tyler burst in, hair wild, cheeks ghost pale, his hands clutching a stack of papers like a drowning man clings to driftwood. He looked nothing like the confident young man who'd once fixed my leaky roof without breaking a sweat. No, this was someone being chased by his own shadow. "Dad, it's bad," he gasped. "Real bad. The FBI might show up any minute." Before I could even process the words, he dropped the papers on my coffee table. Bank statements, legal notices, letters marked urgent in red ink, the kind of mail no one wants to open. My mug slipped from my hands and shattered, hot tea soaking into the old carpet. "Tyler, slow down," I said, steadying myself against the back of my favorite recliner. "Tell me what happened." He began to pace, his polished dress shoes clicking on the hardwood. "We owe more than $2 million. They've got everything, Dad. All the accounts, the emails, the offshore transfers. They're saying wire fraud, money laundering, tax evasion. Everything." It was like being punched in the gut by a ghost. I stared at my son, this man I'd taught to ride a bike, to hammer nails straight, to always tell the truth. Now he looked like a stranger. "I always thought you'd have my back, Dad," he muttered, voice raw. "But you never understood business. You just read your old books, drank your tea, and lectured me about doing the right thing." I wanted to reach for him, to comfort him like I used to when he scraped his knees. But Tyler stepped away, eyes shining with a kind of bitterness I'd never seen in him. Outside, the wind rattled the window panes. Inside, it felt even colder. "You know what?" he said, voice rising. "Honesty never paid our bills. Integrity didn't buy respect. And doing the right thing gets you a creaky house and a small pension. While my friends were making fortunes, I was getting lectures about character." I looked around at the things that mattered to me, the family photos on the mantel, my late wife's favorite blanket, the patched armchair where I'd read to Tyler as a child. To him, it was all failure. Tyler swept the rest of the papers off the table, sending them fluttering to the floor like dying birds. "I needed a father who understood how the world works. All I got was sermons." With that, he stormed out, the door slamming so hard that the old clock above the mantel rattled. I watched from the window as his rented Cadillac sped away, its headlights cutting a path through the falling snow. He was gone, leaving nothing but the chaos of his life scattered at my feet. I sank into my chair, the silence swallowing me. My hands shook as I picked up the papers, their sharp edges biting into my fingers. $2 million. Fraud. The FBI? My mind raced with questions I couldn't answer. But I knew one thing, this was just the beginning. That night I didn't sleep. I sat in my study, surrounded by the wreckage of Tyler's visit, bank statements, demand letters, threats from people with titles like Special Investigator. Every so often, I'd stare at the old family photo on the bookshelf, my wife, Marjorie, with her easy smile, Tyler at age 7, hair sticking out in every direction, and me, 20 pounds heavier and 100 troubles lighter. How did we get here? The morning sun crept through the kitchen window. Cold and gray. I shuffled to the stove to make coffee. I could still hear the echoes of Tyler's words, accusations about my small life, my lack of understanding. It hurt, I won't lie. But underneath the sting, there was a deeper ache. A father's ache. The feeling you get when you realize your child is standing on the edge of a cliff, and you're powerless to pull him back. Just as I sat down to nurse my coffee, the phone shrilled. The caller ID was unfamiliar, but the area code was from Colorado. For a second, I hesitated. Then I answered. Mr. Harris? The voice was young, nervous, but determined. Yes. Who is this? My name is Andrew. I work with your son at Horizon Cybersecurity. I tensed. What's going on, son? There was a pause. I can't say much on the phone. Please, if you're asked to come to Denver, don't sign anything. Don't let Tyler or anyone put papers in front of you. Please trust me. Just get away. Do you understand? Before I could ask another question, the line went dead. I stared at the receiver, heart pounding. The ordinary kitchen, the ticking clock, the smell of burnt toast, it all suddenly felt foreign. I knew trouble when I heard it. 40 years as a machinist in a Minnesota factory taught me to recognize panic in a man's voice. Andrew wasn't just nervous. He was afraid. Half an hour later, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was Tyler. Dad, I need you to come to the office. We're working with some consultants to straighten things out. Bring your ID and a couple of documents I'll text you about. The way he said it, as if nothing was wrong, sent a chill down my spine. The boy who used to run home with scraped knees now spoke with the slippery calm of someone hiding something. Against my better judgment, I agreed. Maybe it was fatherly duty, maybe it was guilt, maybe I just needed to look Tyler in the eye and see the truth for myself. By noon, a black sedan pulled into my driveway. A driver in a sharp suit opened the door for me. Mr. Harris? I'm here to take you to the Horizon building. The ride to Denver was quiet, the highway gliding past snowy fields, then rows of faceless office parks. The city's skyline grew larger, glass and steel reflecting the weak winter sun. My mind ran in circles. What was I walking into? When we finally arrived at the office tower, the driver led me through a maze of marble floors and mirrored elevators. Everything felt expensive, the kind of place where nobody ever gets their hands dirty. Tyler was waiting in a sleek, modern conference room, flanked by a man in a navy suit and a nervous-looking woman clutching a tablet. Tyler flashed me the smile I remembered from his school plays, the one he used to charm his way out of trouble. Dad! You made it! This is just some quick paperwork to sort things out. You're going to help the family, just like always. He laid out a stack of documents in front of me. Legal contracts, transfer forms, things filled with words I barely understood. Liability, personal guarantee, retroactive co-ownership. The room suddenly felt smaller. Hotter. I reached for a pen, but something stopped me. Andrew's voice echoed in my head, don't sign anything. Just get away. Maybe we should read through these together, Tyler, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Tyler's smile flickered. The man in the navy suit cleared his throat. It's all standard procedure, Mr. Harris. Just a little formal housekeeping. The woman, shifting nervously, glanced at me, then at Tyler. Mr. Harris sighed, but Tyler shot her a look that silenced her instantly. My instincts screamed at me to run, but for a moment, I hesitated. This was my son, after all. The boy I'd coached in Little League, the kid I'd built a treehouse for in the backyard. I wanted to believe he wouldn't hurt me. But then, as I turned a page, I saw it, a clause that said, "The undersigned, as director, assumes all present and future legal and financial liabilities, including but not limited to all debts, claims, fines, and penalties incurred by Horizon Cybersecurity and its affiliates." My heart thudded in my chest. Tyler, what is this? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He looked at me, eyes suddenly cold, almost pleading. Just sign, Dad. We don't have time. In that moment, the truth hit me. My son wasn't asking for help. He was trying to save himself at my expense. Before I could speak, the nervous woman, Emma, her badge said, reached across the table and grabbed my hand. She leaned in close and whispered, barely audible, "Don't sign, Mr. Harris. Please. Just run." For a heartbeat, time stood still. Then, adrenaline took over. I shoved my chair back, scattering the papers, and rushed for the door. The moment I rushed out that glass-walled conference room, the air felt electric with panic. I didn't look back at Tyler, nor at the lawyers who just tried to wrap a noose of paperwork around my neck. Emma, the woman who'd warned me, followed close behind. "Take the emergency stairs, Mr. Harris," she hissed, her voice trembling. "Don't wait for the elevator, they'll expect that." I fumbled for the red exit door and burst into the stairwell, my old knees nearly buckling at the thought of running down 20 flights. But adrenaline is a strange thing. It can turn an old man into a sprinter when the situation calls for it. Emma slipped a small business card into my hand as I started down the steps. "If you need help, call me. Don't trust anyone else in that office." Before I could thank her, the stairwell door clanged above us. Footsteps, shouts, Tyler's voice echoing. "Dad! Dad, come back! You're not thinking straight! It's just a misunderstanding!" A lie, plain and simple. I kept moving, one hand gripping the rail, the other clutching the business card. My breath was ragged, sweat stinging my eyes despite the cold draft that rushed up the stairs. 15 flights, then 10, then 5. By the time I reached the bottom, my legs felt like jelly. I pushed out into the underground parking garage, blinking in the harsh fluorescent light. For a second, I stood still, letting my pounding heart settle. People hurried past: security guards, office workers, a delivery driver with a cart full of sandwiches. No one paid me any mind. Just an old man out of place. Above, my phone began to vibrate. Tyler's number. Then another. Then another, unknown numbers, rapid fire, as if he'd set off a citywide alarm. My hand shook as I silenced the phone and stuffed it deep in my coat pocket. The fresh memory of Tyler's cold eyes chilled me deeper than the Denver wind. It wasn't just fear that had pushed me to run. It was the understanding that my son, my flesh and blood, had orchestrated every piece of this trap. I ducked behind a concrete pillar, trying to catch my breath. The business card Emma had pressed into my hand read: Emma Porter, Compliance and Ethics Consultant, Personal Cell. There was a message scrawled on the back. Go to 1621 Grant Street, Suite 8. Ask for Mr. Feldman. Tell him Emma sent you. It took me a moment to gather my wits. Then, moving as quickly as I could, I crossed the garage and slipped through a side door out to the street. My head swiveled, scanning for black sedans, for men in sharp suits with earpieces, for any sign of Tyler's reach. All I saw were strangers and the city bustling around me, indifferent to one more frightened old man. I walked, then half-jogged, for 3 blocks before ducking into a coffee shop. I sat at a corner table, out of view, and for the first time allowed myself to feel the full weight of what had just happened. I had evidence now, the memory of the contract, Emma's warning, even a few blurry photos I'd snapped of the documents in the conference room. But what did it all mean? And how could I prove that Tyler had tried to set me up for crimes I didn't even understand? I pulled out my phone and stared at the flood of missed calls. 37 in less than half an hour. Tyler was panicking. Good. Maybe he should. Maybe, for the first time in his life, he was realizing that his father wasn't as gullible as he thought. That's when the texts began. Dad, come back. We can fix this. You're making a huge mistake. Those lawyers were just trying to help. Please answer. You're my only hope. The mask had slipped, and now he was switching between guilt threats, and pleading, anything to regain control. But my mind was made up. I remembered Emma's instructions. I finished my coffee and hailed a cab, giving the driver the address on Grant Street. The drive across downtown was a blur of city noises, sirens, horns, distant laughter, none of which could drown out the pounding in my ears. When we arrived, the building was nondescript, a faded brick structure with a sign for Feldman Legal Associates. Inside, I found Suite 8. An older man in a blue sweater looked up from a pile of paperwork as I entered. His eyes were sharp, but kind. "You must be Mr. Harris." Emma called ahead, he said, his voice low but urgent. "You need to sit. Tell me exactly what happened, and show me anything you have." So I did. I described everything: Tyler's panic, the contracts, Emma's warning, the stairwell escape. I showed him the photos of the documents. He listened, nodding slowly. "You were one signature away from losing everything: your house, your savings, your freedom. Your son's business is collapsing. He wanted a scapegoat. And you were the perfect mark." My hands shook as I absorbed his words. I felt anger, yes, but also relief, a strange gratitude for Emma, for this stranger willing to help. Mr. Feldman glanced through my phone. "You need to cut off contact with Tyler for now. I'll make some calls. You're not the first parent to be trapped by a child's ambition, but you got out in time." I leaned back in the chair, the adrenaline finally ebbing. For the first time since the door burst open in my living room, I felt like I could breathe. But the fight was only just beginning. Mr. Feldman's office was a world away from the corporate towers and glassy smiles of Tyler's world. Here, the furniture was scuffed, the carpet faded, and the walls lined with books older than most of his clients. But the man himself radiated a calm authority, the kind that comes from decades spent pulling people out of trouble they never expected. He read through my phone photos, occasionally grunting, sometimes pausing to zoom in on a clause or a signature line. "You did good, Mr. Harris. Most folks would have panicked and just signed what their kid put in front of them. That's how these white-collar traps usually get sprung." I shook my head, still not quite believing what had happened. "It's hard to think straight when your own boy is the one setting the snare." He looked at me over his glasses. "Family makes things complicated. But the law sees only facts and signatures. Right now, we have enough to keep you out of jail and your savings safe. But we have to move fast. Tyler and his lawyers may try again, by phone, email, even through the mail. You can't trust anything from them." I nodded. I felt old, tired, but a new sense of resolve was growing in me. I'd survived layoffs, recessions, and the loss of my beloved Marjorie. I could survive this, too. Feldman started making calls, speaking in low, clipped tones to contacts with names like Detective Barnes and District Attorney Riley. He scanned the photos of the contract, sending copies to his assistant. "We're lucky you got out when you did. Those backdated signatures, the liability clauses, they'd have made you look like the brains behind every scheme your son pulled." He looked at me with an odd gentleness. "You'd be surprised how many smart, hard-working folks get blindsided by their own flesh and blood. Ambition turns even good people cruel." While he worked, I sat in silence, listening to the muffled hum of traffic outside. I thought of the home I'd built with Marjorie, the treehouse Tyler had played in, the afternoons we spent at the lake. I wondered when exactly the child I'd loved had turned into the man who'd nearly ruined me. Finally, Feldman finished his calls and faced me. "Here's what we're going to do, Mr. Harris. First, I'm contacting the authorities. You're now an official witness in an attempted financial fraud case. Second, I'm drafting a statement for you to give to the FBI if and when they call. And third, you're going to stay away from Tyler, his business, and anyone connected to his company. Do you understand?" I nodded. The words sounded harsh, but the steel in Feldman's eyes told me he'd seen worse than this. "I'll do whatever you say." "Good. He handed me a folder with typed instructions and his office card. Any contact from your son or his lawyers goes through me now. No texts, no calls, no emails. If he shows up at your house, you call the police. It was only then that the full weight of what had happened began to sink in. I wasn't just a victim, I was evidence. My own son had tried to make me the fall guy for millions in stolen money and crimes I'd never even imagined. As I left Feldman's office, I paused on the front steps, staring at the city rolling by. Denver was all bright glass and energy, but to me it felt colder than a January morning in Minneapolis. I wasn't sure I'd ever see it the same way again. I took a cab back across town, my mind spinning. Each time my phone buzzed, my heart jumped, expecting Tyler's name to flash across the screen. Instead, there were only missed calls and messages piling up, apologies, threats, desperate pleas, sometimes all in the same minute. Back at my hotel, I watched the city lights flicker on as dusk fell. I made myself a cup of tea, more for comfort than thirst. For the first time in years, I missed Marjorie's steady presence more than words could say. Then, just after midnight, came a knock at my door. For a moment, I sat frozen, every muscle in my body tensed. Was it Tyler? The police? Someone sent to convince me to sign away my freedom? I crept to the door and peered through the peephole. It was Emma Porter, the woman from the office, the one who'd saved me. I opened the door a crack. Emma? Are you all right? She slipped inside, eyes darting nervously to the hallway behind her. I had to find you before they did. Tyler knows you talked to a lawyer. He's frantic, Mr. Harris. I overheard him on the phone. He's going to try to spin this as a misunderstanding, maybe even say you're confused or unstable. She handed me a thumb drive. Everything you need is on here: emails, meeting minutes, internal memos. Tyler and his team have been planning this for months. If you ever doubted yourself, don't. You're the only one standing in their way now. I stared at the tiny piece of plastic, realizing it held the proof of my son's betrayal. Why are you helping me? I asked, my voice raw. Emma shrugged. My dad worked 30 years as a machinist, just like you. He said you can lose a lot in this world, but you shouldn't have to lose your dignity. I couldn't watch them ruin you, Mr. Harris. I just couldn't. Tears stung my eyes, not just from gratitude but from the pain of knowing a stranger's loyalty now meant more to me than my own son's. Emma squeezed my shoulder. You're not alone. And you're not finished yet. As she left, I felt the tiniest glimmer of hope, fragile but real, burning in my chest. Sleep didn't come easy that night. I sat on the edge of the hotel bed, the city lights painting restless shapes across the walls. Emma's thumb drive sat on the table, a silent witness to everything I just survived. I plugged it into my old laptop, hands trembling, and began to read. There it all was: Tyler's emails with his lawyers, their plans to transfer liability, evidence of secret meetings, backdated contracts, enough to fill a courtroom, enough to crush a father's heart. Most damning were the private chats between Tyler and his board, where my name appeared again and again as the fallback, and our only chance. The betrayal was as meticulous as it was cold. I printed what I could and locked the rest behind a password Emma had provided. Then, as dawn crept over the horizon, I dressed and made my way to Feldman's office. He was already there, reading the morning news, a mug of strong black coffee steaming in his hand. I've got the evidence, I said, voice hoarse from exhaustion. Emma came through. You need to see this. He scanned the files and nodded grimly. This changes everything. Now it's not just your word against your sons, Mr. Harris. This is a criminal conspiracy. The authorities will act fast, especially with that kind of paper trail. He picked up the phone, dialing with a speed that spoke of long habit. Detective Barnes? It's Feldman. I've got the final piece. Yes, our case just became airtight. Within the hour, 2 federal agents met us in the conference room. They listened quietly as Feldman explained the situation, nodding as he passed around the evidence. One, Agent Martinez, asked me to walk through my side from the beginning: the frantic call from Tyler, the trip to Denver, the trap in the conference room, Emma's warning, my escape, and finally the meeting with Feldman. "Did your son ever say, in exact words, that he wanted you to take the fall?" Martinez asked. "No," I admitted, "but he set it up so the documents would make it look that way. He said it would protect the family assets, but the fine print told a different story." The other agent, a tall woman with sharp eyes, jotted notes in a slim black notebook. "You understand, Mr. Harris, you're not under suspicion. If anything, you're our primary witness. We need you to stay available. And we strongly suggest you don't go home to Minneapolis yet. Tyler and his associates may still try to reach you." I nodded, relief and sorrow mingling in my chest. "I'll do whatever you say." After they left, Feldman leaned back, his face thoughtful. "It's not over yet. The next few weeks will be hard. There'll be lawyers, maybe even reporters, and Tyler will likely try everything: apologies, guilt, even threats." He handed me a new phone, already programmed with only 3 numbers: his, the federal agent's, and Emma's. "If anyone calls you except us, don't answer. Change hotels. Don't let your guard down." I spent the next days moving between small motels, always paying cash. I called Marjorie's sister in Michigan, letting her know I was safe, but not much else. The loneliness gnawed at me, but I'd been through darker nights before. Sure enough, the calls started again. This time, Tyler used every trick in the book. "Dad, I'm sorry. They tricked me too. Let's talk, please. You're ruining my life over a misunderstanding. We can fix this. If you don't help, we'll both go down. Is that what you want?" Each message stung. But I remembered Feldman's words: ambition turns even good people cruel. I deleted the voicemails, blocked every number. Still, there was no blocking the memories: Christmas mornings with Tyler in pajamas, his high school graduation, the day I gave him my father's watch for luck. Late one evening, Agent Martinez called. "Mr. Harris, your son's been arrested at his office. His business partner is cooperating fully. The DA will be in touch about your statement. For now, lay low. And thank you for not giving up, for having the courage to face the truth." When the call ended, I let out a shaky breath. It was over, at least the dangerous part. But nothing could erase what had happened between father and son. Betrayal leaves a scar that even justice can't quite heal. In the quiet of that hotel room, I realized my life would never go back to the old, comfortable patterns. But I also knew that Marjorie, wherever she was, would have been proud. Proud that I'd stood up for what was right. Proud that I hadn't let love make me blind to the truth. The next morning, the sky over Denver was clear and impossibly blue. For the first time in weeks, I stepped outside, feeling like maybe, just maybe, I could breathe again. In the days that followed, life moved in slow motion. I found myself wandering the streets of Denver, hands deep in my coat pockets, watching a world go by that had no idea what storm had just blown through my life. Snow fell in lazy sheets, softening the city's edges. People hurried to work, laughed at corner cafes, lived their lives untouched by words like fraud, liability, or betrayal. I envied their simplicity, even as I felt myself becoming invisible among them. Federal agents checked in each morning. Feldman kept me busy with paperwork and witness statements, prepping for grand jury testimony. Emma called twice, always quick and businesslike, just to check I was all right. Her voice was a lifeline I didn't know I needed. When the official letter arrived, from the U.S. District Court, I felt both dread and relief. It meant the government was moving forward. Tyler would face justice, and the evidence Emma and I had gathered would be at the center of it all. I testified in a courthouse that looked more like a library than a place of reckoning, all marble and wood, quiet except for the shuffling of feet and the distant hum of fluorescent lights. I spoke my truth, line by line, from that first frantic phone call to the moment Emma told me to run. I told the jury how my own son had nearly sacrificed me to save himself, how it felt to read my name on legal documents meant to destroy me. Mark, Tyler's old business partner, testified too. I watched him on the stand, nervous but honest, describing how the company's collapse pushed Tyler into desperation. Mark admitted his guilt in ignoring the warning signs. He looked at me as he left the stand, shame and gratitude mixing in his eyes. During breaks, I sat in the courthouse cafe, stirring cold coffee and thinking about my wife. Marjorie always said, "When you don't know what to do, just do the next right thing." I tried to live up to that. Even now, I wished I could hear her voice just once more, to tell me I'd done enough. The defense tried to paint me as a confused old man, someone who misunderstood his son's intentions, who overreacted to business stress. But the evidence said otherwise. My photos, Emma's documents, Mark's testimony, together they told a story no jury could ignore. After 3 long days, the verdict was read. I sat in the gallery, hands folded, staring straight ahead as the foreman stood. "Guilty on all counts." The words rang in my ears, both a hammer and a bell of deliverance. Tyler didn't look at me, not once. He stared at the table as the judge sentenced him, 11 years, plus millions in restitution and fines. I felt numb, but underneath the numbness, a strange sense of peace began to grow. Justice had been done. The law had spoken, even if my heart remained heavy. Reporters waited outside the courthouse, eager for the "family betrayal" headline. I said nothing, just walked past the cameras and microphones, wishing I could disappear into the falling snow. That night, I found myself at a small diner 2 blocks from my hotel. The place was half empty, the waitress friendly but distracted. I ordered meatloaf and mashed potatoes, something warm and familiar. As I ate, I thought about the decades that had led me to this day, the sacrifices, the pride, the mistakes, and the blind love that had made me miss the warning signs. Emma joined me, her coat dusted with snow. "You did it, Mr. Harris," she said quietly. "You did the hardest thing a parent ever has to do. You told the truth, even when it hurt." I wanted to thank her, but all I managed was a tired smile. We ate in silence, the comfort of a good meal and honest company settling between us. "I'm leaving the company," she said finally. "Going home to Nebraska to be near my dad. He needs me now." I nodded, understanding completely. Sometimes, all you can do is start over. As she left, she pressed her business card into my hand one last time. "If you ever need a friend, you call me. And if you ever doubt yourself, remember, you saved more than your own life. You saved your dignity." Back in my hotel room, I opened the window and let the cold air fill the space. Denver felt different now, not a city of betrayal, but a place where I'd found the courage to survive it. I thought of Tyler, of the boy he'd been and the man he'd become. I thought of Marjorie, her quiet faith and stubborn hope. I thought of Emma, Mark, Feldman, and the strangers who'd become my unlikely allies. Most of all, I thought about tomorrow, and how I might start living again, one honest step at a time. I stayed in Denver until the court was done with me. There were loose ends to tie up, interviews to finish, a life to pack back into an old suitcase. But as the days passed and the headlines faded, I began to realize that the most important chapter in my life wasn't ending, it was just changing its scenery. The morning after the sentencing, I walked down to City Park. The air was brisk and full of promise. Sunlight glimmered on the frozen pond, and children chased one another across the grass, their laughter echoing through the cold. For the first time in months, I felt light. My shoulders no longer sagged under the weight of secrets and fear. A call came from Feldman. "The media's lost interest, Mr. Harris. The papers are moving on to new scandals." You can go home, if you're ready. Home. The word felt both comforting and foreign. Minneapolis was waiting. The old house, the quiet street, neighbors who would surely ask questions I wasn't ready to answer. But there was something comforting about the thought of familiar floors beneath my feet and Marjorie's faded garden out back. I took the bus north, watching the mountains give way to fields, then forests, then the flat horizon of home. My suitcase was lighter, no evidence, no paperwork, just a couple of shirts and a battered photo of Marjorie. I didn't need much else. When I arrived, my house was just as I'd left it. The mail piled up, the yard a mess, but I didn't mind. I brewed a fresh pot of coffee and sat at the kitchen table, listening to the familiar sounds of pipes and wind. Peace, I realized, wasn't the absence of trouble, it was the quiet after a storm, the feeling of surviving what you thought would break you. Over the next weeks, I settled back into my old routines. I raked the leaves, fixed the squeaky step, even dug through boxes in the attic for old fishing gear. The days were shorter now, the air sharper, but I found comfort in the honest work. The neighbors waved, some stopped by with questions thinly disguised as small talk. I simply told them, "It's been a tough year. But I'm all right." The hardest part, always, was remembering Tyler, not the man he became, but the boy he'd been. Sometimes I'd stand at the window and watch the snow falling, wondering where he was, if he felt any regret, if he thought of the family he'd nearly lost. In my quietest moments, I prayed he'd find peace, that prison might be the place where he'd finally see the truth and choose a better path. Letters came from Emma in Nebraska, brief but warm. She found work at a public school, helping kids who lost their way. "It's never too late to be a good person," she wrote. "You proved that to me." I pinned her notes to the fridge, small reminders that not every bond in life is broken by blood. Sometimes Mark called too, giving updates from his new job in California. "Don't let anyone tell you you're too old to start over, Harris. Turns out, the second half of life can be the best." One snowy Saturday, I drove out to Lake Harriet, the place Marjorie loved most. I sat on the old bench we'd carved our initials into decades ago and watched the sunrise. The sky went from violet to gold, spilling color across the ice. I thought about everything I'd lost, my illusions, my sense of safety, even my trust in my only child. But as the sun crept higher, I realized I'd gained something else: resilience, a deeper sense of self, and the kind of wisdom you can only earn the hard way. I'm not sure what comes next. Maybe I'll travel, visit Emma in Nebraska or Mark in California. Maybe I'll take up fishing again, or finally fix that back fence. Or maybe I'll just enjoy the quiet, read the paper, drink my coffee, and remember Marjorie's laughter. If anyone asks what happened, I'll tell them the truth. My son betrayed me, but I survived. And along the way, I found out just how strong an old man can be. On my last night before spring, I'd built a fire in the fireplace and sat with Max, the old dog from the shelter I'd rescued after all this was done. He curled at my feet, snoring gently as the embers glowed. The house was quiet, the world at peace. Tomorrow would be another sunrise, a second chance, for an old man who had already lived 2 lives. And this time, I would not be afraid.